Meeting of the CAC is now officially called to order.
Let me get the microphones for you.
Sure, those handouts.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
No, but this is.
Oh, got it. Put it there on the pile. You find it? Okay. Got it. So, I gotta make a quick announcement.
Okay, we're starting the meeting. We're going to try to move through the meeting as quickly and efficiently as possible, since we're starting a little late, but it was
hey, it
late
was
for a good reason.
right.
It was for a good
Good
cause.
cause.
You don't get to see a street named after someone every day.
So, good Betty.
Go Betty. You missed that part, Councilman. Betty, if I could sing, I would sing to you if you ever knew that. Did you ever know that you're my hero? But no one wants to hear that. So Maria has an announcement.
Just a quick note, since we've been taking, Marcy and Erica, the communications team, has been taking video of the unveiling of the Betty sign and her speech, etc. So they're here still doing some footage and a video of the meeting for a little bit of time, not very long. Right, so in case anybody wants to know who they are, that's who they are. All right, let's move on.
I think Maria's also saying "be kind" in the words that you use.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with introductions, and we'll go to my right with our new executive director, Gretchen Holler, her first time here as executive director.
Thank you, and this is the first time Liz has made me a name tag, though I've been to many meetings in the past, but just in time. So Gretchen Holler, the new executive director of our Mayor's Office of the National Western Center. I caught Betty with the mouthful.
Thank you for everything you've done for me. It's so nice to see all my friends here. I'm just really pleased. But you know, I've been here since 42. Nobody, I don't think half of you would be born then. So a long time ago. But I saw Illyria grow up and then fall down when the structure fell apart. You know, when the packing houses fell apart. And then but I saw the best of the years here, the best of the stop selling years. It was really a pleasure to know that I was the first to see it for a long time, and thank everybody.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Betty.
Betty, I have a quick question. Was that 1842 or 1942?
You don't have to answer that.
There was actually nothing here in 1842.
I'm Jocelyn Hiddle. I'm Director of Denver Program Development for the CSU system, and I never want to follow Betty Cram again. Or Dr. Charles.
David Oletsky, Global Neighborhood. Larry Burgess, I'm the president of the Business Association.
Albus Brooks, City Council.
Kayla Birdsong with the Grow House, and I'm the new executive director of the Grow House, and I've been there with the organization 4.5 years.
Congratulations.
Workforce Coordinator for Family Environmental. My name is Jerome Hairston.
You have to come back. We can't skip people.
Tom Hora, longtime friend Betty's. We don't know what we'd do without you, Betty. We love you.
Stacy Hora, live in Swansea. Betty's my Avon lady.
It does
I
not
love her, and
doesn't get better than
she
that.
has been such an asset to our community. I can't even imagine it without her.
Ann Hayes with Westfield Company.
Tracy Weil, Reno Art District. Congratulations, Betty. That's awesome.
Carrie Atier with Visit Denver.
Ann Elizabeth Glowville, and I have the esteemed honor of occasionally sitting with Betty while she writes one of her letters to make sure that happens. And I hope we can do a special living archive of all of your correspondence to the city over the many years regarding very important issues. Very deep.
Jim Garcia with Clinica Tepeyac.
Vernon Hill, JJJ Properties, Globeville.
Juan Veloz, embajador de DPS, representando Elyria y Swansea.
Juan Veloz, ambassador of DPS, representing Elyria and Swansea.
I'm John Sapien, a Global resident.
Liz Adams with National Western and CRL Associates.
Maria Garcia Berry with CRL and National Western, co-facilitator. Are we going to go around the room?
I'm going to go around the room.
I don't think we'll have time.
Okay.
Terrence Carroll. Well, there's some people, members of the CAC behind us.
Okay.
That don't have, they don't have, there was no room at the table.
Mark Rodman with History Colorado. Thank you, Betty.
And I'm John Olson with Historic Denver.
Okay, and Drew Dutcher is on his way. Do we have other members? Oh, okay.
I'm in place. He can't make it.
For him?
Drew.
For Drew.
For Drew. Oh,
Okay.
excellent. There we go. Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Terrence Carroll, co-facilitator, member of the board of the National Western, and they let me keep their money as treasurer. So, isn't that scary? So we're going to move on to the partner updates. We'll start with the Office of the National Western Center with Executive Director Hallrow.
Thank you. We've got a lot of, several agenda items today, so I'll keep this fairly brief, but I did want to point out that we generally have a number of our National Western Center office team with us at these meetings, and then many of them are here today. If you want to raise your hands and wave, Team NewCo, thank you. If you have questions, it's a lot of material that we're going to present today, so if you have follow-up questions, anyone on our team is available for that. So a couple of, we've got a number of efforts going on at the same time, so I'm going to touch on them briefly, and then we'll do a deep dive, as we do at most meetings, on placemaking, which is our version of Master Plan 2.0 plus some infrastructure design, early design on roads and utilities. You'll hear that today. You also hear a 1909 Stadium Arena update from Eric Schafran. And then Chris Proud's going to talk about the parking study that we recently completed. And then finally, the partners, our team included, will talk about November 3rd. In addition to that, the city has been working with the Stock Show and with CSU on a baseline scope, schedule, and budget for, is this still on?
Here. Straight out. I'll see what I can do.
No, here.
Switch.
Thank you. Okay, we've been working on a baseline scope, schedule, and budget for the program. That's really when we launch the formal tracking of program expenditures, schedule, scope items, so what we're going to build. And we've talked about that at prior meetings. We should have that wrapped up in another couple of weeks, how we define our starting point for the program. It's the place that we get measured going forward. And what we measure is something called the variance report. So any change in scope, any change in schedule, any change in budget from that point is something that we'll be reporting out here to all of you and also at City Council committees. So making sure that's in a format that's accessible so you can see real time, month by month, year over year, how we're delivering the construction of the campus for phases 1 and 2. So that will be coming soon. We've also been continuing discussions with the Denver Rock Island Rail Company on how to approach consolidation of the lines that run through the campus and how to coordinate campus development with their ongoing operations. I do think we'll have some discussion of that in the next couple of months. Right now, we are still at a place where we are trying to come to terms, though the city will also, with the partners, initiate a conversation with the Surface Transportation Board at this point, because we have not been able to come to terms. So we'll be working a parallel path, essentially, leaving the door open for negotiations and also pursuing this discussion with the Surface Transportation Board. In addition, I wanted to announce that we will be having a final Executive Oversight Committee meeting, and as you know, that's the group that's been standing in place of the authority the National Western Center Authority that will operate and maintain the campus, and was the subject of all of the conversation of the past few months here with this group when we brought forward the framework agreement, which has now been approved by City Council and our partners. So what I'd like to do is send out through Liz and the facilitators the date of that final EOC, Executive Oversight Committee meeting. The focus of that will be on what happens next to stand up the National Western Center Authority. I don't know at this point that we will be focusing on the candidate names. Those discussions, as you know, through this group are very much in process, but there are some very specific tasks for the authority to accomplish. Hi, Drew. And we'll outline that. The goal is no surprises, and one of the steps that my office is bound to take and required to take through the framework agreement is a national search for a president and CEO of the future authority. So I will be bringing that back here, both how we proceed with that search in terms of hiring a firm, how we bring the committee that's required with the equity partners that we will serve in that search, but make sure that we're bringing all that information back to this group. It's the first and most critical hire of the new authority. With that, the last thing I'll mention is that the city will be we are working on with our partners and will be letting a request for information for an energy partner for the campus. All this is a test of the market around some of the ideas about district energy and more sustainable solutions to see if there's a market out there that would want to work on this program with us so that we can share some of that outcome and some of those teams that come forward with the authority. They would ultimately be signing any contract with an energy provider along with Excel as a partner. So we're doing a little exploratory work on behalf of the future authority, and then we'll also be sharing with you how they stand up. And that wasn't that short, but I tried.
It was short enough.
Paul won't be here till later.
So we're going to hold off on the update from the WSSA. Paul's in another meeting, but he'll be here later. We've been joined by Councilwoman Debbie Ortega. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I can't stay. I was hoping to be here in time for Betty's dedication, but Betty, I'm here for you. Anyway, Susan's here to represent me, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. Jocelyn, CSU update.
Thank you. Is this on?
It's on. It's just acting weird.
All right. So a couple updates. One is I just wanted to let you know how the pet clinic that we had on October 14th at Focus Points went. It was a great day. We had about 100 families come in just to do wellness exams, 30 spay neuters with Dumb Friends League, and then they came back to Focus Points last weekend, and I think are coming back again this weekend to do additional spay neuters with their big trucks that they'll be parked at Focus Points. We also partnered with Clinica Tepeyac and UC Health to offer flu shots and health screenings for people who were there as well. So we did sort of both the human and animal side this time, which was new. So we had a great partnership with Focus Points, Clinica, UC Health, Dumb Friends, and Pet Aid. Who am I missing? There was 6 of us. So it was a really great day and our 4th annual one of those. And so we're going to keep thinking about how we improve it, how we add new components. I think we're interested in keeping that collaboration with Clinica and UC Health for next year. So really great day. I just want to remind everyone that Tony Frank is a citizen of the West. I think you have heard that in this meeting and know that that's coming, but really excited that the relationship between CSU and the National Western continues through that recognition, and we're all excited to celebrate him in January. We are also continuing to collaborate in a little bit more depth with Bruce Randolph, and we have equine assisted therapy with some of the Bruce Randolph students that is starting up again right now, and a variety of other collaborations and partnerships that we're working with them on. And I think next month, Tiana Nelson and I are coming to present to you all on a variety of these things, so I'll keep it short on that. Because I don't want to I don't want to ruin our own punchline. So we'll bring you more information next month on details of all that. One other quick thing I'll say is that you may remember that CSU had a team of faculty who was doing some preliminary energy and water modeling on the site and looking at kind of the snapshot of the existing use and the build out that's described in the master plan. We will be, in the next couple of weeks, bringing on some additional faculty who are looking at various different other subjects, and we're going to let them identify themselves what they're interested in bringing to that team, who will act, and they will act as advisors, particularly to the placemaking team as the placemaking work continues. So you may hear from some of them who have a little bit more interest in and need to connect with the community and maybe ask you a couple questions here and there as their understanding of the project evolves. So that's it.
Just pass it back to Nancy for the update from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
Good evening. I wanted to say that we are really excited to be working with CSU on some of the programming that they're going to be doing. And we've been fortunate enough to be involved in meetings with some of the schools. And we're going to be working on some of the early childhood sorts of needs in particular that we've heard from the community, because we have some expertise as well as some assets around that. So we're very excited to do that. I also wanted to mention that I brought a whole bunch of passes because it's been a while since I've done that. You all know that all organized youth groups are always free to the museum, as well as all school groups. We'll be rolling out also very shortly, within the next month or so, a plan for adults who have developmental or intellectual disabilities to also get in free, so that those groups, the groups that come that visit are not having to come on free days. So we're really excited about that. But I have a bunch of passes because I know some of you have mentioned to me in the past that you have smaller groups, family groups, neighbors who would like to come, and we have that Ultimate Dinosaurs exhibit right now, which is a wonderful exhibit for families, really fun. And then finally, I think that Julia mentioned this at the last meeting, but we do have the Dead Sea Scrolls coming in March, which, yes, wow. Jocelyn's face, it's incredible. It is really, we can't believe it's actually true. It's taken years, and it is a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience that this is coming to Denver, and the actual pieces of the scrolls will be there. There's all sorts of artifacts, and we're very excited for that for our entire community. It's a big deal, and so as it gets closer, of course I want to hear from all of you ways in which we can make that accessible. That's all I have.
Thank you. There's an update from History Colorado. Mark. Thank you, Liz.
Over the last few weeks, History Colorado has been working with the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center in historic Denver, and we actually have some very exciting news. Historic news, maybe. Exciting news we'd like to share with you. But what I'm going to do is pass the mic to John Olson from Historic Denver, let him talk a little bit about what we've been doing. John?
Thank you, Mark. The news is we've been talking about some of the properties and some of the neighborhood buildings that are within the site. One of those in particular is 4701 Brighton Boulevard, which was most recently a grocery, but it's on the northwest corner of 47th and Brighton. We just were successful in getting a grant, thank you very much, from History Colorado for $15,000 to be able to take a look at that building and do a historic structures assessment, which would be involve architects as well as engineers taking a look at that and seeing if the possibility of moving that building, hopefully a very short distance, to get it away from what is construction that is now occurring, or going to be occurring on Brighton Boulevard right after the stock show. So we're very excited to get that started. I was just talking to the architect yesterday, and they were wanting to know if the contract was going to get set so that we could do that for next week. We're hopeful. Yep, we just got the word from Mark. We can. So we're going to get them ongoing, and we're happy to have that discussion with both the city, with the mayor's office, with the National Western Stock Show, the National Western Center, as well as with History Colorado, to make sure that this can happen and we can see if this building could be preserved, as well as talk about some of the other buildings and how they can work their way into the new plan that's happening. So we're excited for this, and we'll keep you updated, especially in this committee as well as many others with the community at large, to tell you how it's going and what the condition of that building.
That's great. Any questions of AE?
I have a couple questions on prior updates, not on the history, which is very exciting. I'm happy to hear about that.
All right.
So do you want to take history
Can
questions first?
I just have a request from History Colorado?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's really exciting. I just want to point out that I think the confab for saving 4701 Brighton started at the last CAC with a group of you all sitting in the back, sitting around deciding whether we can save it or not. So that's really cool that happened. Is there any way we could do a, I don't know what you guys call it, a audio history of Betty Cram?
I'm sure we can work that out. Let me get back to
An oral history. Thank you, A. Because I know you guys have an entire group and some staff dedicated to that. I know you've got bandwidth issues, but it'd be great if at some point we could have an oral history of Betty Cram to put in the records of History Colorado and be able to do that. So
we can make something happen.
And maybe get some contact information tonight from her good friends too.
yeah, right. That's exactly right. So that'd be great. So Betty, are you up for that? Talk about your life story. So it may lead into other things in this area, but I think it'd be great if we could do that. Okay, AE, you have questions?
Okay, I'll just put the 3 questions out, and then people can decide who has the knowledge. This may relate to placemaking, I don't know, but I understand that there's some conversation seriously going on within the planning about making the slip that interfaces with Elyria friendly to the neighborhood on the Brighton side of the equestrian center. And I'd like to activate the conversation about how, in this group, about how where the NWC footprint meets the neighborhood and neighborhoods, that actual interface is being tended to, so we can really have some conversation. So that's, should I give the other 2 questions and then?
Well, if I could just,
Sure.
I think that's something I'd like our placemaking team to address as part of our discussion tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Can you, Gretchen, give a intersection of the timeline between the standing up of the permanent authority, selecting the firm that would help do the recruitment for the executive director, and how the permanent authority would be involved in that?
Sure, and I can do that quickly and be available for questions afterwards. And a lot of this is prescribed in the framework agreement. The National Western Center office has the task of running really concurrent with the authority being stood up, the initial search, and the requirement is a national search that's asked for in the framework agreement, which takes some time. And having NWC really act only as a NWC is the National Western Center office. Having NWC act as the facilitator for that, there is no timeline, though I know there's some urgency because it's a months-long process. So the next, I am asked in the framework agreement to convene a committee of 3, 1 representative from each of the equity partners. And I would not be that representative. I would be acting on their behalf to, it says to lead a national search. So there are folks that have expertise in this, so that's the firm that I would seek to hire and bring forward what firms are specialized in this, and then what a job description would be, which is not part of the framework agreement, but there are some obvious tasks in the framework agreement that would be part of that. So that's kind of one track. The other is the standing up of the actual authority. So there is a process underway now where each of the partners that have appointed seats are collecting names and also qualifications for those directors. This is my anticipation, is that by December we should be hearing something back from each of the equity partners about the candidates that they are reviewing or have under review or have talked with. Our expectation is also that in the first quarter of 2018 that group would assemble for the first time, have some period of onboarding, and then be able to sit together as a board in that first quarter of 2018. when they sit down, it triggers in the framework agreement a number of tasks that they need to perform, including creating a budget, finding insurance, a lot of the business of setting up the authority. So that's part of what we're going to review in the Executive Oversight Committee and walk folks through those details. And by then, we should have more understanding of the search. And the NewCo office does not select the president and CEO. We do a national search. We compile a short list. We hand that list to the authority. At that point, the authority, sitting down for the first time, can add additional candidates, and it is their selection as a new board of who that first hire should be.
Great, that helps.
I just want to clarify something, Gretchen, because we made this announcement at the last one. I'm a little confused when you said the equity partners. There's 2 equity partners that have already made decisions who's going to sit on the authority, and that's been announced. So I want to make sure.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry.
Colorado State University has decided that Tony Frank and Amy Parsons will be representing CSU, and National Western approved it at their board meeting this month. That it's last week. That it's Pat Grant and Paul Andrews. So just to make sure that we're not reviewing that
Done.
ship has sailed.
Can I?
So we're only waiting for the mayor now.
I am surprised at those nominations.
Yes.
But, no, sorry, I'm so close.
You were shocked.
I'm shocked. I'll need a moment to recover, but we will, so I'll refrain this just as the city's nominations, but wanting to have the full board seated all together, including the city seats for nominations, which also, I neglected to mention, there's a city council approval process for any of the nominations that are put forward, and that, that's part of the calendar that we need to address.
Thank you.
Okay, so just a quick response. The Denver Public Library did this great process where they had a public meeting where they allowed a Q&A with the finalists for the district library down at the, and I thought it was phenomenal. And I asked very naively for the group, for the authority to consider whether the finalist for executive director of the NWC could possibly have some kind of exchange with the constituency out here, the NWC-CAC. I have no idea if that's realistic. You don't have to comment on it, but I would think that would be awesome.
Go ahead.
The nice thing is there are 4 named members now that could address that question.
Right.
But the board as a whole will probably want to take that on.
Okay, I
Yeah,
suggest
plus
it
higher ed-
as a consideration.
As someone who's sat on a higher ed board, higher ed does it all the time.
Okay.
So I would not be surprised if, at least looking at CSU over here, if that came as a reference, because they
it's a
do it,
possibility.
they never, in higher ed, you never finally appoint a president without going through some sort of a public process.
And I just went through that with Metro State. We went through a very public process to appoint our new president.
So everybody on the CAC that wants to think about questions.
For those
and
of you who
exchange-
ultimately get decided to go meet with the mayor next week with Councilman Brooks, that should be on the list.
Sure, and anybody who's an individual that wants to put in additional support, great. And then my last question is for Jocelyn. We had spoken a little while ago about maybe a report out on that 50 million that came with HB 1344, because 200 million is going into the footprint and then 50 million. So I wanted to just kind of ask if that can be put on the timeline for you to.
Sure, we can do
report
that
on
next month when Tiana and I are here. We can add that to our sort of overall, it's a little off topic, but doesn't matter. We'll just give sort of a CSU download on all things.
I think it helps us complete the picture of the relationship in a certain way.
Appreciate that reminder. Thanks, Amy.
Okay.
Our next report is going to be Michael Sapp in place of Tim Sandos.
Tim is here.
And Tim is.
Or Tim Sandos.
Wow,
We'll give him a
perfect
chance-
timing.
We'll give him a chance to sit down because we left something out from earlier in the meeting about meeting announcements, et cetera, just to reiterate that. Our meetings are announced through the NDCC newsletters, the CAC email list, and a broader CAC newsletter list, and on the NWC sites. And all materials for the meetings are always found on the website at www.nwc-cac.com. Again, that's www.nwc-cac.com. The site also lists all the upcoming meetings. So we're very transparent, everything that you need to know. It's on that website, so make sure that you go and check it out. In fact, make it a favorite on your favorite browser, whether it's Safari or Google Chrome, or if you're still behind the times and have Internet Explorer, use that one. Also, we want to talk about the importance of individual CAC members doing their own outreach to their networks and to people that they know who live in the community. When the rubber hits the road, at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the members of the CAC to reach out to their friends and neighbors and family who have an interest in this. There's only so much we can do, and we've pretty much reached the extent of all the touch points we can do from our end. But the most important touch point in any organization like this or any group like this is a personal touch point where you personally invite your friends and relatives. As someone who used to be involved in politics when I was much younger, we used to send out all the emails like Councilman Brooks does and all that stuff. But the most important thing in terms of getting people to show up at a meeting is going to knock on their door and telling them to come to the meeting. And even, like we used to say in church, when we open the doors of the church, if someone's a little frightened to go down the aisle to go down and get baptized, you just kind of grab their hand and pull them down with you. So if you want more people to be here, more voices from the community, reach out. If you have to, drive people here, take them by the hand, bring them here. So we just wanted to reiterate that we want more people here. We want more people's voices heard, but we need help to do that. And you know the folks who you think should be here, so please reach out to them and make sure that you let them know when the meetings are and get them here. And with that, I hope Tim's ready.
You betcha, sir.
I can tell.
I'll walk the microphone over there, and while I'm doing that.
Oh, there's a microphone at the.
Oh yeah. Can I just do a couple of housekeeping items real fast? I'm going to pass around. Remember, we talked at the last meeting about a new way of tracking attendance, so I'm going to pass our attendance list around. All you have to do is just initial by your name, and if you're an alternate, just note that you are an alternate representing a business or a nonprofit that's on the group. The other thing I want to do is give a shout out to Michael Sapp, who worked really hard on that sign, the logistics for that sign. We had a brief moment where we thought Public Works wasn't going to show, but the good news is it happened, and so thank you to Michael for that. Just also know that the pies are local. They came from Long Eye Pie, which cooks out of a bakery at the Fort Greene. It's a little pub on 45th between Grant and Logan. It's a great pub if you ever want to go there. And Shauna makes the pies, and she is available to make them for the holidays, and her cards are up here. So if you're interested in that. So that's just my housekeeping, and then I'll turn it over to
Liz, is it possible for her to make just a straight bourbon pie?
We can request that.
I'm asking for a friend.
Okay, so attendance sheet coming around.
Well, good evening, everybody.
Is this on?
How's that now? There we go.
Perfect.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry that we snuck in a little bit late. We were lost weaving and finding our way back. This has actually been a pretty good day for us, and we wanted to start off with a good news announcement. We had made an application with the Colorado Health Department with a program called Todos Activos. It is a program that we designed for teens, and the purpose of the program and the grant is to be able to train young people in the process of planning, designing, and implementing projects within city government. And we had targeted this program for young people, teens, to figure out what kind of activities they want to do in a park, what kind of equipment would they look for. The process about how you do that, selecting the location you're going to put it, what are the monies to do that, how you raise those. That is Todos Activos. We will have approximately 30 young people that are involved in it. There are a variety of things that they get educationally. And the good news is we won that grant for $300,000. And we will be applying that in the next 2 years to young people here in the community. So we're pretty stoked about that and the number of young people we're going to be able to work with. I wanted to touch on what we're doing with the Central 70 mitigation improvements. We've come quite a long way with those in a very short time period. Last month we got approval from the council to be able to partner with CDOT to complete the mitigations. We have had a very good response so far. Get to the actual number, we have 160 residents out of the 268 who have responded to our first round of inquiries to set up the assessments that we'll do in each home. Of those 160, about 76 are actually renters, but we've been able to contact the landlords and we've been able to move forward on those. We have about 27 of the assessments already completed. We've got 6 of the homes actually completed. And the things that slow us down at this stage are just the windows, because one of the things that we're finding in the size of the windows, people's homes are generally custom in this community, which we expected them actually to be more conformative. So ordering those is a 6 to 8 week process, but once we get those starting to move, we feel very, very confident in our ability to complete the projects. A couple other things that I wanted to touch on. In the assessments that we've done, we found 6 emergency situations where people had non-functioning furnaces, hot water heaters, gas leaks. We found one particular home where they had a water heater both on the ground and in the attic, and it was a potential fire hazard. We were able to repair all 6 of those, bring them all to code, put in new furnaces, new water heaters, along with the rest of the things that we're doing. So that, again, is one of the reasons that we partnered between the city and CDOT, is that we've got far more capabilities with many additional things we can do for homeowners that would not have come with CDOT alone. And this is 6 examples where we've been able to do that. We have 2 other homes where the individuals were in process of being evicted. And one of the first things we wanted to check was, were the landlords evicting them because they thought that they could get money from these repairs, repair their homes, and then evict and sell. That was not the case in either instance. Both instances, the landlord had not touched base with us. We had not been able to contact them. Nonetheless, in both cases, we were able to implement the new housing rules and laws to assist the homeowners to be able to keep them in the home a little bit longer, provide assistance for them in negotiating with the landlord about how we could move them and then help them find to another home. So again, as we come across these more difficult situations, we set them aside and give individual help with them while we continue to do the mitigation work that we're working on out there. In terms of workforce development with this project, we just identified 15 residents of Groveville area, Swansea, who are going to be trained on doing the window installation, some of the insulation in the homes, the sealants. They are starting their class next week to train on how to do all these things, and we'll be putting them to work as we start to do the installations. So small steps, but 15 new jobs are 15 good new jobs, and we're training new people. So that's something I'm really happy about. We talked about what we can do and where we want to go with workforce development. And this is one of the places where we're able to start, and we've actually got some jobs moving. So I'm real proud to be able to share that. So those are 2 of the more major things that we've done. We had the 1-year anniversary of the Brighton Boulevard groundbreaking. Hard to imagine that's actually been that long, but it was sponsored for us at in the Rhino Art District, Rhino, BID, and GID of supporters. And as we did that, introduced what are called the Orange Pages. The Orange Pages are an advertising booklet for businesses along Brighton Boulevard so that they can let people know that they're open, that we can market some of the things that they're able to provide, and we can help support the businesses while we're going through the construction process. And it has been extremely well received. We had planned to do it once. We're now looking at being able to do it a few more times because the support that the businesses had was so significant. We have started the design work for 47th and York Bike and Pedestrian Bridge. We had 30% that's been set aside. for the initial 30% design. That is now begun, and we're starting to move down the road with the assumption that it will pass on the GO bond election as we move forward. One last thing I'll touch on now is the art bridge. We are making application for GOCO, or Go Colorado, for a $400,000 grant to assist with the pedestrian walk bridge that's being presented by Zeppelin Development and Bridges to Prosperity. Key component to this was the design work and $250,000 that the city, or actually NWC-CAC, put in to do the 30% original design. Zeppelin and Bridges to Prosperity have completed that design, and we're making application. We feel very confident that we're going to be able to be successful with that application, and that will be the last portion of money that are necessary for us to be able to move forward with the program. Is Mickey here?
No.
No.
No. This is the first time I've been to anything in GES that Mickey wasn't at. Kind of amazed by that. So we're happy to be able to work with Mickey, their partners, on the work that we're doing. And then the last thing that I would share with you is that we are moving forward now on the Community Investment Fund on how we provide the support for the community to identify different structures that are available, help you to understand what different opportunities that are there for you, so you know how to select or what you want to select to move forward with the Roundup funds. And so we'll be bringing more back to you next month. It is our hope that in November we'll be able to start to schedule some of the first meetings with the community in the planning and how we are able to reach out on that. So those are the most salient things we've been doing in the last month. The last thing that I would suggest is we got notification today on the lawsuit that had been filed. It was the McFarland lawsuit on P2P, or Park Hill to City Park, and the city prevailed in that lawsuit. That was announced today and released by the courts. I've not had an opportunity to read through it, but I thought it was important to be able to share with the group that that lawsuit has now been settled by the courts. Any questions that we can answer, I'd be happy to do.
Yeah, just one quick question. Well, not a question, just a comment, and maybe you can, hopefully you can elaborate on it. As we know, there's been a shift in the new direction of the directorship of the Colorado Department of Transportation. Shalane Bott is moving on to greener pastures. And Mike Lewis, my understanding, has been appointed. Mike has taken on bigger projects in the United States, along with the Boston Dig. And his involvement has been more proactive than Shalane Bott. Given Mike's involvement with these larger projects, to me it seems that it's a window of opportunity for the city to get involved with somebody that's more proactive within the community. How do you foresee Mike Lewis's involvement or change in leadership now that Shalane's gone?
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Unfortunately, all the knowledge I have on that, you just gave me. You know more than I do on that. So what I would commit to you is next month I'll come back. I'll make sure that we have a chance to meet with them, see where we're going, and some of the things that we're able to do. I would share, for instance, in another example though with CDOT, in a couple of the homes that we're looking at, in order to do the insulation in the attic, it's going to require us to do to drill in from the roof, come in to do the insulation fields. That's quite a bit more money, generally in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $5,000, and CDOT is picking all of that up. So they've been good about where we find these, again, oddities in the designs of homes, we can do that. But I did not know until this afternoon that Shalane had left, and I wasn't aware that Mike was on board, so I'll look into that. AE?
So I have a question, or just kind of want to get a clarification about the reference to the Community Investment Fund. When you mentioned that the conversations would advance regarding the use of the Roundup, I want to reinforce that my understanding is from the framework agreement that the Roundup, which is rounding up at the cash register voluntarily, but a mandate that all vendors offer that. The Roundup is just a entry point for an example of how revenue can be generated for the Community Investment Fund. It opens the door, but it was understood from several conversations at CAC that hopefully will broaden the imagination of where we can generate funds. And the Roundup idea, if I'm not mistaken, isn't really going to, well, I don't know what the activation date on that is, and Councilwoman Ortega had put before the CAC possibly activating the Coliseum, and I'm not sure how that fits in, but I just want to be really clear about that because I think we made progress on broadening the imagination. It's not just, I think the bigger consideration is how do we as constituency in Global Elyria and Swansea, which is very diverse, come together with putting a criteria together for the Community Investment Fund, even beyond just what the legal entity would be. And I just want to say that I was pretty impressed with the geobond exploration that was done as far as reaching out into the neighborhoods across the city. There were 3,000 ideas or 4,000 ideas that came in. So I hope that nobody will be too constrained about bringing in ideas to broaden it before it's contracted. And then one last thing regarding the East 47th Avenue, New York. I appreciate that you mentioned that the NDCC has done some planning in their 30% design, but I don't want it to be lost that there was a very long process of the departments, planning, public works, parks, engaged with the constituency of the neighborhoods, especially in Elyria and Swansea, with the hundreds of parents and dozens of people within the schools to come up with a lot of that creative. So I want to, and the push came from within the grassroots there. So I don't want it to be lost with the NDCC administrative overlay as much as I appreciate the coordination. So just as a matter of record.
Okay. Yeah, and all points very well taken. Councilwoman Ortega and I have talked about how we can activate the Coliseum sooner, and again, working with the community on setting up a structure and a legal entity is the first thing that has to happen in order to activate the Coliseum and other entities, but we'll be able to do that. And part of it will be going through and facilitating discussions with the community on what kind of opportunities are out there for consideration by the community of what you would like to select, what paths would you like to go down. John Zappian last night had made a comment at the Washington Street, was the final
I didn't say that.
citizen review that I thought was extremely well taken. And what John said is that these communities, Global Elyria, Swansea, are really starting to get a reputation for their hard work in identifying the needs of the community and making those happen. And 47th Street that you just mentioned is one of those. You guys really are getting a good, strong reputation for being very good about this, and I think so much of that came from this particular group. And so there are other opportunities to do this. They'll keep going. None of these are easy, but there's a great deal of work being done, and I applaud you all. We'll continue to do that with you.
Tim, just a quick comment about the Art Bridge project. Just a quick reminder about making sure that that there's a concerted effort to get the word out to local artists about this opportunity. A lot of young artists, I think that this would be a great opportunity for them to show what they can do.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is part of the application process, so I appreciate that. Again, we want to activate the arts community at all.
We have one more question from Liliana, and then we'll have to move on with the agenda.
So I just have a follow-up question on how the messaging is going to the families and households that are going to be affected, and wondering if like the fear or anxiety of like having the city come in with some potentially like situations that are not up to code that could be affecting the outreach there, and sort of what is the mitigation around that, what's the messaging when folks are like their homes are not up to code.
Sure. Did everybody hear the question? How are we reaching out, especially to make sure that we're touching base with everyone and having people that can work with the community who may be somewhat distrustful, not opening doors, not responding, so that we can get the assessment set up, show them what's there. The process that we've used thus far is as follows. We send out postcards inviting them to call us and schedule an assessment. We sent the second card out just on the 9th of this month. And as I said, we've gotten really deep response, much better than we thought that we would have, actually. So our issue right now isn't that we're not getting a response rate that we thought we would. We're actually getting a higher response rate. Now, the second thing that we do is follow that up then with direct calls and door knocking. We've been working with CREA results, the promotores that they've got that are actually going door to door, having discussions, getting the appointments set up. And so we're getting a very good actually response from that. They've been very, very successful. That said, there are still going to be those that are harder to serve. We're going to have at least 5 different attempts to contact them that could include 2 door knocks, the direct mail, and phone calls. And then at one point, we will have to provide a notification for them that because they didn't respond, we can't move forward. But if they contact us by whatever date, they certainly are still welcome and still work with them. So that's the process tree that happens. Now, there are a couple other things that I'm sure I've missed that are additional touch points with calls and other things, but so far it's been very successful.
So should people feel afraid to get citations from the city if their building or their home is not up to code, like in order to get the support?
Good question, and that is, should people be worried about getting citations if their home's up to code? The whole process is designed not to do that. So by doing the assessments that we do, we will make the homeowner, be it a landlord or a homeowner, aware of everything that we identify. There is no filing of any code violation, and in fact, as I described, where we find them, to the extent that we can, we repair those right on the spot. So actually quite the contrary. We can generally help them more, and they don't have to worry about being turned in for any potential violation. Chris?
Just to add to that, so one of the contractors doing the mitigation, Energy Outreach Colorado, has programs to help with the, Chris Pacheco, Deputy Director of NWC-CAC. Energy Outreach Colorado, the contractor doing the work, has programs within their tools to help address that. You know, they can address some of the minor code violations that they can fix at that time. However, I want to do that just a preface. When it comes to life safety type code violations, that's a different issue that we'll need to have to address at that time. So.
And I'd add one other thing is that we also have very low interest financing for families who have very serious violations that are provided by Dura that allow us to finance anything over a period of time. And there are various programs available, some of which you take the loan, you don't have to repay it until you actually sell the home. And it has extremely low, if not 0% interest, depending on the situation. So a lot of situations, that's where those are taken care of. I would also suggest one other thing, and that is when we find a home where we have those serious violations and they are owned by a landlord, the landlord does not qualify for the same level of benefits that we would give to a homeowner. So they would have to pay for the repair for their own home if they're renting. If not, and it's an individual homeowner, then those are taken care of in the programs that we've got available. This, again, is one of the things that is so different because the CDOTs or the DOTs around the country have not previously had a city partner with them to provide so many additional services. And it's very unique in what we're doing here. We're pretty happy with the outcome so far.
John Sapien had a quick comment, very quick comment.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say at the meeting the other night, Tim brought it up, the presence of the National Western and the new brand was present. I want to personally thank you for being there, setting up the table, and I think it's a good visible demonstration to the neighborhood of the growing partnership between the neighborhoods and the National Western. Thank you.
We're going to go back up in the agenda just a tad bit. Paul Andrews has now joined us, and what are about a little more than 2 months away from the next National Western, the best holiday in the state?
Yeah, so we're feverishly working on the National Western Stock Show.
But at the same time, we have to raise $15 million by November of next year. So I've been at a capital campaign meeting the last couple hours, and we have to get that money in here because that's part of our contributions to this, the $50 million that we have to raise. So we're busy doing that and busy with the planning for Stock Show. We're having a great early year. Our sponsorship sales department is up significantly, which always is a good indicator as we go into Stock Show. Many new things at Stock Show this year. We're trying to get a live demonstration of cow milking for the kids. We haven't had that in, I don't know, 50 years. So we're working through some of the regulations you got to do for that, but there will be a long line of kids trying to do some cow milking if we can get that done, which would be a lot of fun. So planning's going very well, and the National Western Center planning is also going very well. Really just starting with some of the operations people and placemaking team and so forth, looking at some of the interior and exterior of the buildings with my staff and with some of our executive horse and livestock committees. So that is all good stuff as we're planning to get this right so we can...
Fall Feast.
What's that? Oh yeah, Fall Feast. So we do have Fall Feast coming up with our great partners at KM Concessions. They really have been the leader in this, and we partnered with them. And the Fall Feast is November, I'm going to say... 11th. You think it's 11th? Okay, I think it was either the 4th or the 11th. 12th. Is it the 12th? Okay, 12th?
It's in November.
Sure? It's in there? Okay. Anyway, but my staff has been planning that. Obviously, I haven't been deeply involved in planning that. But my staff has been, and I assure you, I know there's many things for the community at that besides just free lunch. I know it starts around 10 and ends around 2. And there'll be, I think, free haircuts are going to be there this year. We have, I know, about 5 or 6 different services that people can come enjoy for free. So we're a proud partner, and KM really is to be congratulated for leading the way on this. So this is year 2 of this. I know many of you came last year, and hopefully you'll be able to come this year. Even though I'm not positive about all the things, I will be there, I promise you that, because I've got it in my calendar. So
why was you looking at Dave when
we
you
actually
said
nailed the
haircuts?
date. It's November.
No,
November 11th.
stay just like you are, my friend.
It's November 11th.
It's the 11th, it's Veterans
November
Day.
the 11th, all right, we knew it was right around there.
Veterans
That's
Day, I
that's
presume
a
you're going to do
Saturday,
something.
right?
Yes.
And Paul forgot to mention that we actually have a new version of button busting for adults. It's called bull riding, busting bulls. And they're I promise they're very meek and mild. And I'm personally picking the people to get on the bulls. So if I invite you, please say yes. Okay, we're moving on to
The core of our business.
the core of our business discussion, and just ignore anything I said about bucking bulls. The first thing we need to talk about is getting consensus regarding the NWC authority appointees for discussion with Mayor Hancock. Basically,
No, we need to consensus on the criteria.
that's what we're doing. That's what I said.
Okay. Remind.
We're like Bert and Ernie. No, we're like those 2 guys in the balcony on the Muppet Show. Yeah, Waldorf and yeah, that one. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about the criteria for the discussion with Mayor Hancock in terms of do we present a whole list of people, like every name that we ever thought of who we want to be appointed?
It's really more just a whole list of the criteria versus.
Right.
Let Liz
Right,
talk about
it's
this
the-
part.
yeah. So if you look at draft 2 that is in front of everyone, that document that Vanna over here is holding up. So as you know, we had our special meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was a really productive meeting, and everybody that was able to be here, we just did around the room. We had every person say what was important to them in an appointee to the National Western Center Authority Board. We divided it into 2 pieces. One, what's important for the resident members that he's going to appoint. Remember, he's appointing 1 that's a voting member and 1 that is a non-voting member. And then what's important just generally for him to consider as he is appointing the remainder of his appointments. So it really was a great exercise. And what I did is I took all the comments and tried to keep them as close to their original format as possible and grouped them. And you have that in front of you now. So it's GES resident and grouped comments, and then the at-large, if you want to call it that, appointees and those comments. I then sent it out to everyone and gave everyone a week to make comments on the document. I received only a couple comments back, or comments from a couple people back. And so that either means that maybe you didn't have time to review the document or you were happy with the way it looked. So the way it's written now, it's kind of in a little bit of a memo format that gives some background, that explains how and why you all chose to do this, and then lists basically the laundry list that you guys did. Now, there's the opportunity, if you want to winnow it down, we could, but it could take a lot of time to get to the actual details. And I think specifically in the area of how long do you think someone should have lived in GES in order to be considered? There's a wide range. And maybe the message is that it's an important issue, but the committee, the idea is that the committee believes that there should be some level of period of time that people have lived in GES. But there's no way, I think, in one evening you guys could come to a specific number.
I can.
So
3 to 20.
3 to 20. There we go. There we go. So I don't know if we want to go through by section and if you guys have additional comments. This is a document that we need to give to the mayor's office tomorrow. And it's because the meeting is on Tuesday and we're already sort of past their deadline for getting meeting materials to them. I gave them a briefing document which sort of held us over. And then in a minute, Councilman Brooks, if you want to chime in here, because you will be joining the councilman. 5 of you will be joining the councilman. So do you have a comment on the list of criteria? Okay, great.
140 characters or less.
Hey, so we'll have the meeting at 9 o'clock on the 3rd floor in the mayor's office. And what I'm asking is that everybody, we meet at 8:30 on the 4th floor in the city council office to just gather ourselves before we go down. I would suggest that we come up with talking points of maybe each of the 5 members come up with some talking points that they would talk about. We only have 30 minutes, right? So we don't have a ton of time, so we've got to be very succinct and very clear on what we want to describe to the mayor. And then I think it's also important, I think we're going to do this, go through the names of the individuals who will come, who will join. And also, I really want folks to be thinking about the mayor's going to choose the 2 community people, voting and non-voting. But we also said we want another community person, and he has other choices. And so to really hone in on that, and whoever is describing that from the criteria, I think is very, very important. So during the meeting, I'll try and keep us on track, make sure it's clear from the mayor. Now, will you be there as well?
I have it on my calendar.
Awesome, okay. Because his other staff don't really know all the particulars of kind of what's going on. And at the end of the meeting, I just want to round up and make sure the mayor heard us, and it's very clear what we were trying to get across. This is my hope.
That's great. Thoughts about the criteria? I actually, I know I had to leave before the meeting was totally over. There was a special meeting, but I thought you guys did some really good work in terms of this criteria. What are your thoughts about doing it in? I actually, from a document that would go to the mayor's office, I think this document is in pretty good shape because of the way that you can read by sections. It also allows you to, per Councilman Brooks's comments, allow you to maybe each one of you take a section, okay? So they can be really good talking points for the meeting. So I think you guys did really good work. I think of all the people who have been talking about authority members, you guys have done the most work to talk about what the criteria ought to be in that aspect. So you should all be, for those of you who suffered through the meetings and all that, it's terrific. So tell us your preference as to what you want to do, because the one thing we do have to do tonight is we have to decide who the 5 people are. And we've got ballots, I mean, we're going to have to vote. And our suggestion is that as we go through it, that if there are 5 people who think they want to do it or want to do it, we ought to just self-nominate. And the top 5 people who get voted on are the people who ought to go, in terms of that aspect, in order to be very fair and transparent. But, so let's talk through what you want to do with the criteria first.
I have a question for all of us, it's real quick.
Sure.
Regarding the meeting, it's a half hour, and I appreciate the main purposes for the mayor to register what the consensus, to hear us. Can we ask the mayor, or could the group ask the mayor to please elaborate on his criteria for the 6 additional that he's, I mean, is that an opportunity for us to get more specifics from the mayor?
Definitely. I think we can talk about that, but I want to be very clear.
We gotta watch the
No, you're setting that criteria as well.
Right.
I mean, that's
You
the
gotta do
reason
that
why
first.
we're meeting with them. There's a lot of other groups that are sending names, but no one is thinking about it holistically and saying, how can we put the criteria in place now? And so this is ahead of the game in my mind.
And AE, I believe that Barry is the,
Yep.
Barry Birch,
Birch.
right, is the director of boards and commissions. I believe he's going to be sitting in on that meeting as well. I believe that was on the list of people that will be there. So he'll be able to help with that.
So what do you guys want to do about criteria? Leave it as is, or?
I like the broadness of it.
Drew?
I think we had a really good discussion a couple of weeks ago. I think the criteria are pretty good. I mean, we could, spend a lot more time on it, but if somebody really has something to add, if they have a burning feeling about something. But otherwise, I think we should keep moving on.
I do.
Dan?
I just have one question. I might be missing it, but under the criteria for other members, it very clearly states it committed to the mission of the National Western. And I wasn't sure that was also for the community member.
What page are you on?
I'm on the page 5. So under knowledge and commitment, the last bullet point, it's dedicated to honoring the mission of the National Western. And I think that if it's not included under the bullet points for the community member, that unless it's obvious that that's part of the criteria. That's my only comment on it.
Liz, you edited this, so.
So sorry, I just need to look at where you're.
Here, she's right here.
Oh.
So you've got this.
Oh.
Is not repetitive, it's not in the other ones.
Page 5.
It's
Okay.
excluded out of.
So do we want to just add that to the GES one as well? Okay.
Right.
Vision statement on both. Got it.
Good
Okay.
catch.
Excellent. And there are a couple, I will proof it a little more. I took comments and I can see there are a couple little inconsistencies, but we'll get that done between now and tomorrow morning when I have to submit this, so. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, John?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that's the reason we're here, to begin with. And that's the whole reason of the creation of this committee. And I would try to emphasize on whoever the 5 individuals are that meet with the mayor, that they drive that home with the mayor, that he also consider people from sitting on this group for his other appointees. Thank you.
Right. David?
There's going to be 5 and it's going to be 30 minutes. So what is that, 2 minutes, 3 minutes apiece, or how are you going to?
He's going to be moderating it.
I mean, you gotta look at that.
Yeah, I mean, do the math. We don't have very much time. But what's nice about this is everyone doesn't have to read every word underneath their section. The mayor's going to get this. He's going to know it. You're just talking about the spirit of what we're trying to say in each of the subsections. So my hope is, everyone does that in a minute and a half, 2 minutes. We get a chance to ask some specific questions to the mayor, like you were just saying, AE. What's your criteria? Do you have anything in mind? Can you help this be some of your criteria? That's the ask here. And we really want a third person, basically. 2 voting and 1 not voting. I guess
Are
my
you-
question is, can we just jump into who wants to go?
Yeah, who wants to go?
Well, and who's
Well,
available too, right?
And who's
I mean,
available? So are we okay, other than the modification that Ann caught, are we okay doing this format? We'll reproof it and send it in tomorrow, because obviously the mayor needs to see it before the meeting, so he'll have that knowledge base. Are we good with that?
Take a visible vote of approval, including the CAC people that are sitting in the back?
Sure. Ask for it. So can you all, everybody raise their hand who's a CAC
I
member?
request a visual vote of approval for, I don't know if we're supposed to do motions here later.
It's okay.
A visible vote of approval to approve this as the representative document for Albus and the group to carry to the mayor on October 31st with the changes Liz is going to put in.
Okay. Can everybody raise their hand, please? CAC member who supports
Or
this?
even you guys that are not at the front table, like Liliana.
Are you guys good?
I think it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit more.
Yeah, with the changes she's going to put in.
Like,
Yeah.
like the residency time and, I mean, I don't know. That's just a little bit of cleanup. In this state, no. I don't really do it.
So when you say residency time, you're
There's just a
sitting,
range, like literally 3 to 20, like 6 different points on residency.
okay. So can I respond to that from the last
Sure.
conversation? Part of the very, very heartfelt conversation at the meeting, the special meeting, I guess on the 12th we had about that was
Yep.
whether or not we should put a specific number on it. And so the idea of weighting, WEIGHTING, weighting that criteria versus do people have children, what has been their engagement, it was a way of saying there's a cluster of qualifiers that the mayor could consider that we felt in the conversation were all important. So instead of having a litmus test, have you been here a certain number of years, maybe a minimum of 3 to 5. I was said 3 and was happy to say 5, after hearing the conversation of residency. So I think part of what we're saying as a group is it's impossible to come to a specific list of litmus tests, but if we can call upon the mayor to weight those but include all of those. That's the thinking behind that. Would that satisfy your?
Yeah, I didn't want, yes.
It could be stated that way.
explanation helps.
Yeah.
Like, if we could phrase it that way, that's more helpful than having just
Do you have that?
I do.
And whoever is speaking on that, I think that was a beautiful way to describe it.
Great.
So,
Okay. So given that, with that other modification, where are you guys on moving forward on this? Do you want to try your
well, I would just ask.
quasi-motion
for all
again?
I would ask the chair to ask everybody who would like to formalize this document as that which Albus and the representatives would carry to the mayor's conversation representing this group after cleanup by Liz, that they approve it, that we
Right.
approve it.
So moved.
Can I see it? All in favor, raise your hand, please.
And there's some
Okay.
in the back that are voting on this.
Right. So am I missing anybody? Anybody opposed? Okay, perfect.
Abstain? Any
We're-
abstain?
Any abstention? Thank you. All right, we're good to go. So now let's get down to who wants to participate, who wants to go, who wants to be part of the meeting. And if there's only 5 of us, we don't have to have an election. But if there are more than that,
So I
yeah.
am just going to pass out the list of the members so that if it turns out that there are 6, we can do so, and then everybody can look at the membership and maybe mark the people that say they're available.
And this is not a time to be shy, so self-nomination is absolutely encouraged, what you all need to be, so let's not be shy. Drew.
Maria, are you going to divide, there's 5 people, are we separating residents from nonprofits or something, or is it?
Not necessarily.
So it's
This is
5.
members, yeah, the CSE.
So we just, okay, all treated as one.
Correct.
Okay.
And what time is it?
Liz?
The meeting's at 9.
Meeting's at 9, we
8
meet at
o'clock.
8:30.
Yeah, Albus would like to meet at 8:30. So, come on, guys, let's not be shy.
May I?
John?
I'm not being shy about this. I would like to be one of the members And my specific reason is to remind the mayor at that meeting of his commitment to our neighborhoods and to the National Western, and do it in a very civil, appropriate manner. I think the mayor has responded, as I said previously. We need to act during favorable political times, and they're not any favorable more so than they are now. And I would like to be one of the 5 people there to reinforce the mayor. I'm sure he doesn't need it, but I just want to make sure that he's still with us on this.
Okay. Others? AE.
So I would like to step up as a possible participant for the purpose of participating in the spirit that John is describing, with as much of a meticulous attention to the relationship between what we've created as an administrative organization and a grassroots partnership. And I feel like I would like to ask that somehow we structure a little bit of give and take with the mayor in a friendly way within the conversation, because that's a way of knowing what the commitment is, and that we go into it with particular, obviously I don't know if there can be a concordance with the framework agreement, but I think that's a good follow-up with some of it. And I'd like to have a caveat that we let the mayor know we look forward to having a conversation with him about the Community Investment Fund in a similar structure as we go forward. So.
Okay. I've got
But
John
I
and
want to
A.
say I don't know if all 5 of us need to speak, because I would be satisfied with just being there, just to bear witness. And if there's, you know, if there's 5, I don't know if we all can
All right,
figure out.
so John and AE. Come on, guys. Armando, are you
My
in?
perspective is totally different. When Hancock first ran for office, he was the only candidate out of the other candidates that came down to Globeville. In fact, I was one of the ones that hosted a fundraising event for him over at Laredon Hall. We handed some ballots to him. And at that specific function, they also came over to the Pilgrim Church to have a debate, where all the other candidates, it's sad to say, they neglected us. But Michael came, and I want to remind him of that. He's came once, he's been coming, and we as a community responded to that, and we turned out some votes and gave that to him. I just want to show that from a positive perspective, you know, we're all moving forward, and we want to continue to move forward and build a great city right along with it. And in the spirit, of course, this forum that Alice has been so kind to present, we like to take that opportunity to build on that energy and synergy and be able to move forward. So that's the direction that I would come from to present to the mayor. And especially now with our new leadership, with Gretchen here, working with the new board that he's going to construct, I think that presents a beautiful opportunity for just to build on that and be able to capitalize on his vision for the city and county.
Okay. All right, who else? I'm like, okay.
Which one?
Drew.
I'm sorry, Jim. I guess with deep humility, I'd like to be one of the 5 to meet with the mayor. I think I've tried to exhibit and communicate my concern about these neighborhoods. And I want to thank Albus for arranging this meeting. I think that was very good, Albus. Thank you. And I think I've shown to everyone you all know me. So I hope you'll consider me to be part of this.
Okay.
So along with the reasons that have already been stated by the others, I would say that I would like to attend, not to speak on behalf of the coalition of community-based organizations, but to speak as one of them that works for the community on behalf of the residents.
Who else?
Can we nominate somebody?
5, right?
That's 5.
Could we have some of the business people, if they have time,
He is business, John.
balance it out?
Jim is busy.
Jim Garcia is business.
Yeah, I know.
I'm business.
I know. I just said other people.
Go, John. AE. You can, but you've got 5 people. If they don't, you gotta talk to them first as whether they ought to go or not.
So Maria.
But go ahead, AE.
Maria, can you read the 5 people? I
The
have
5
4
people,
down.
we've got 5 people. We've got John, we've got AE, we've got Armando, we've got Drew, and we've got Jim.
Okay.
Last time I checked, that was 5.
Okay, sorry.
Okay? Thank you. AE, go ahead.
Well, I'm in a dilemma. Liliana, I really wish you were part of the conversation. Partly because you have a continuity of early childhood concerns and have been engaged in a broad spectrum, or I consider you a legacy member of the neighborhoods, and so I'm in a dilemma because I hate to force a vote, but can we just have an alternate?
I second that nomination.
I appreciate that, Aggie. I mean, I'm happy to be there, or be an alternate, or whatever, however it may work out.
So, is there anyone else? Because, I mean, I just threw out 5, so it could be 6.
Right.
So it doesn't. I
Are
don't
you
think
okay? Get a hit. Juan would like to go.
7 is a holy number.
7's fine.
I don't know. I mean, this is your group. This is your community. You guys make the decision. I think what's hard is, I mean, 30 minutes. You can do the math. You know, it's not that much time. So.
So, one suggestion is that, I mean, if there's 7 of you that want to go, then some of you will have, then you can all decide among each other who will be speaking and who will not be speaking, because 7 times 5 times, 3 minutes is going to be tough, right? But, if you're okay with that, Albus, if you can agree
fine with
to
that.
speaking or non-speaking, I think it would be a good representation of the strength of the CAC to have those 7 members attend.
That's good, and I'll just say that, make sure everybody's there at 8:30 so we can really
Hammer out the
hammer out the details.
We're gonna need
Yes. Yeah, so what I'll do, if, I don't know if you want to have a final decision on this, Maria, but once we have this group, I will communicate with them. I'll kind of maybe draft something up for you. We'll work on the process and so that you're prepared and everybody's prepared going in, okay? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, and maybe even from now to then, trying to put some names next to the
Right.
the bullets that they
I
want.
can work on that.
Think through what you guys want to talk
Maria,
about.
could you list the 7 again? Just so
So the 7 are John Zapien, AE, Armando, Drew, Jim Garcia, Liliana, and Juan Veloz. And Juan, we will make sure that there's a translator available for you.
I mean, perfect, the Magnificent 7. I mean, hopefully it's not the same ending as
Yeah.
the movie, but it's...
Yeah, go ahead. You've got the mic.
I was trying to hear what Terrence
Hey,
Terrence is being irreverent.
Okay, I would just like to say in the spirit of this that I think we've come up with a document that we have a good obligation to, and the sooner we can get it from Liz and have it printed out and reviewed, and if people wanted to put highlighter by part of it that they felt especially equipped to speak to, I think that would help us get organized, and that could be the anchor of our strategy. But I also think that if any individual thinks of something that is critical in the framework of it, I think there's room for that too, I would hope, in the conversation.
Okay, are we set? We're good to go, guys, on this? All right.
I'll be in touch with everybody.
We have 2 other things that, that we want to touch upon before we turn over to Gretchen's team on it, but membership update and discussion. We talked about this at the last meeting. We talked a little bit on it on the meeting on the 12th. We have 3 members that are stepping off. Groundwork, Tangier, who is back, wants to get off she's still technically, the Groundwork is still on the CAC. They want to leave the CAC because quite candidly, they've got no staffing capacity. They've got bandwidth issues. they're, and they haven't been here in a long time to be able to do that. Marina, from where wood meets steel, has had health issues and feels it's really, really hard for her to continue participating. And then Candy. And we can send around the email that, that Candy sent us today. Candy has been communicating with Terrence, Liz, and myself about she would like to get off the CAC, but she would like either Nola or Ray to take her place. We then, she raised back an issue with us today about why can't she name who succeeds her when not-for-profits can. And Terrence can address that in just a minute because it's a bit of a difference. We need to decide, neither Ray nor Nola are here tonight, I believe. But if we want if we want to consider this at the next meeting, we're going to have to deal with the fact that we've got some vacancies, and what do we want to do about this in terms of the committee. I don't think we have time tonight, and quite candidly, neither Nola or Ray are here, or Candy, to be able to talk through that. Obviously, Candy submitted her name as a resident last year and an individual. I believe Nola is not a resident of GES. Ray is. But that's for us to talk about. Terrence, I'm going to turn it over to you as your response that you had today, which I thought was a differentiation between the two.
I mean, there's really an apples and oranges difference between organizational members of the CAC and individuals. The organizations are here because of their commitment or their work or their involvement in the community. And so when they're allowed an alternate to come to the meeting, it's not an alternate for an individual, it's an alternate for an organization to ensure that that organization's voice is still heard when we have a meeting. When we have individuals who are involved in the CAC, they've gone through the process that we've outlined in the CAC. It's not our bylaws. We don't. Thank you. It's not our bylaws. I was about to go get the bullhorn. We don't have bylaws, but we went through a process, 2 years ago when we said this is how an individual or an organization actually becomes a member of the CAC. And when you're an individual of the CAC, that seat belongs to you. So when you resign, you no longer have a spot. It's just you're either a member or you're not a member. There's not an alternate. It's like a member of the Denver City Council. If President Brooks can't make it to a council meeting, he doesn't get to choose an alternate to show up and sit in his chair at the council meeting. He's either there or he's not. Or if he resigns from the Denver City Council, he doesn't necessarily have the right, and nor would we expect him to handpick his successor. He can try, but the people still get a chance to decide if they want his handpicked successor. So what we've always done in the CAC, we've never had a hard line rule about how many individual members that we can have who are residents of the community, people who are interested. It's one of those things where if you want to be a member of the CAC, you're an individual, you write a letter, you attend a meeting, the group then, 2 meetings, the group then discusses who you are and whether you really do have a commitment to this. So when a person leaves the CAC, they can say that such and such person would be a good fit to join the CAC, but that person's really not replacing anyone. There's not a finite number of spots. In fact, it's almost an infinite number of spots up to a limit, I suspect, but we don't know what that limit is. But there's not a finite, so there's not like Terrence is leaving and therefore I'm anointing Gretchen to be the new Terrence because I'm leaving the CAC, which would be an interesting concept. But this is really, but the truth of the matter is, if anybody, Ray, Nola, anybody else in GES wants to show up and wants to participate, there's a clear process by which this happens. And I'm not saying that Ray or Nola should not be part of the CAC. I'm just saying it's apples and oranges between an organizational person having alternates, or they're not even people in organization, having a group of 3 people who show up, and someone leaving the CAC and say, I now want to have my own alternate and pick my successor. It's not generally how we do it. Susan.
I was just going to
Groundwork no longer participating, why don't we invite the GES Coalition to participate as an organization? And then whether it's Candy or Nola or Ray or whoever, they could be here as a organization in the neighborhood.
We discussed that at the last regularly scheduled CAC meeting, and I don't think anyone was opposed to the idea of the GS Coalition having an organizational membership. And but I'll let AE, because I think she was part of those discussions more than I was.
Is this on?
Yes.
I'm not comfortable putting individual names or individual organization names out in an advocacy position when we have worked hard to have an objective membership process, application process. I don't want to play politics with this, even neighborhood politics. I really like some of what GES Coalition is doing, and I don't fully understand it, and there are other constituencies that I think would be valuable. I want us to be, we have to go beyond that, I think, with the CAC at this point. But I do feel that when Candy Sidabaka came on, part of it was to make sure there was another residential seat. And so I think it behooves us to say it's Swansea and Elyria or Swansea Elyria. I think that can be preserved. If she had presented, if an individual had presented themselves as a neighborhood or an organization person, then sure, they can bring an alternate in. But I feel like I think even more so now we need to do an open call if we're gonna do this in the spirit of our wanting to do better outreach and be more inclusive and take this CAC to a more standards, and that doesn't at all negate a desire to support what individuals or groups are doing relative to the whole push.
Susan.
Will Groundwork be replaced?
No.
They won't, so you'll just have one per organization.
We don't, to Terrence's point, when all of this was created, we have no cap on this committee, okay? So as people, as organizations have decided not to continue participating for other reasons, etc. So it's not a tit for tat situation, all right? It was an absolute focus of this committee when Candy came on, that the #1 priority was to get more residents involved.
I understand.
Okay, so, no, Groundwork will not be replaced because they as an organization, Tangier used to be very involved in this area. Then she got another job, and then she's been very straightforward that there is no bandwidth in the organization to participate, to be able to do that. And, I appreciate their honesty instead of hanging on there and then not being around. So I think to AE's point, I think there needs to be a notification. I mean, we announced to people that we're, if you want to be, we talked about doing this once a year, that we would have a call to invite other segments of the community that may be new or, whatever, to come in, so we can do that. But for all practical purposes right now, we don't consider Candy having resigned because she's not sent us a letter of resignation. She's just asking what, potentially could do that. And I think it'd go different ways. When Candy came on, Jim came on at about the same time, where we added an organization and then we talked about residents and being able to do that. So that's part of it. So I think that's what the committee needs to think through.
And I've never been one to duck most things. I just take things head on, and I will say to you that my perception, and this is purely mine, I won't attribute it to Maria or anyone else, that the underlying thought here from the email exchanges that we've had is that somehow the CAC is being exclusionary for the voices that we allow onto the CAC. And all of us who have been here over the last 4 years know that it's categorically not true, because at the end of the day, if you show up, you go through the 2 meetings, we talk about you, and you show up and you keep involving yourself, no one here kicks anybody off. We let people linger forever and ever and a day. We don't exclude anyone. And so I'm actually highly offended by the undertone and the undercurrent of the conversation that we're excluding people, because we don't. I mean, we go out of our way to try to find voices. That's why I made the comment earlier today. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring whoever you think in your community should be here and get them involved. Because we want to have more voices, we want to have more diverse voices, because it's in that diversity of voices that we find strength. So for anyone to assume or to allude or anything else that we're being exclusive or keeping people from the table, that's just not true. And so I'm going to go back to full circle to what I said at the beginning of the meeting. We want more voices, bring them here. And we put everything on our website. Everything's transparent. We don't play hide the ball. This is not three-card Monte of politics. Everything is out there. So at the end of the day, bring somebody. I don't care if it's an organization, I don't care if it's an individual, we want more residents, but bring people to get involved in this and be engaged in a very thoughtful way without bringing hidden agendas or anything else into the room.
John?
You're being very gracious. I'm going to be hardline about this. There's a definite separation between, and no offense, Jim, the nonprofits that work in the neighborhood, God bless them, they do a good job. But residents need to be represented. And if a resident resigns, I'm not willing to replace the resident, or if they just don't show up, with an organizational member. A resident vacancy needs to be filled by a resident. And from that particular neighborhood, not from another neighborhood. I agree with you, you can't pick and choose and call the shots. I said this before, we're going to be not an exclusionary group, but all inclusive. And I can look around this room and I know several people that sit on this committee today because of their wanting to be a part of it. And they showed it and they were voted on. And I think we ought to adhere to that and make sure it works. Not only for this group, but for the residents and the business and the nonprofits. Thank you.
Liliana.
Yeah, so thank you, John. I'm not sure that the conversation is like residents versus
No.
nonprofits.
No
Yeah,
versus.
it's both at
It's
the
got to
same
be that
time.
way.
So I just want us to think about and reflect on, like in the spirit of inviting folks to the table, how self-aware like each one of us individually and collectively are when new people come to the meetings and what the experience might be like for folks. Like how are we designing a welcoming environment for folks joining, like understanding that a lot of it is business and a lot of it is hard to understand coming in one or two meetings. So just putting it out there for reflection of how we're really like talking or walking the talk when we're wanting to be welcoming and inviting of new folks.
And we could actually have a much better onboarding process and orientation process. I mean, we're weak there. We need to probably think about how we do that much better.
An item for the next agenda.
So, are we done with this topic, or can we move on? Because we have a whole bunch of city folks that we've squeezed into a little bit of time. Gretchen, you want to?
So what I had talked briefly to my team about is a proposal, because we have 5 items to present, that could easily be an hour and a half. And my proposal is, many of these things are iterative. We bring them back to you time over time. We also have different avenues for outreach and input, especially around placemaking. That's going to be months-long process and with lots of engagement points. I'm asking my team to go quickly, 5 minutes per subject if you can, and post documents online. Then I would ask at the end of all 5 presentations for our team to stay and be available for discussion and questions individually, almost in a roundtable format. Those questions that are important for other folks to hear, I would ask them to bring them to me, and I'll include them in the director's report at the next meeting, so that there'll still be some visibility around the common questions and answers, but to enable us to go through this with a little more timely approach. Does anyone have concerns about that? And if there's a particular subject here, we can also do something more lengthy. But that's my proposal right now.
Sorry to have to ask.
Yep.
Which door is to the bathroom?
Go up here and it's right on your right-hand side.
Is there a speaker?
Yeah. Actually, there is. And Gretchen, we're going to
You can't
get
ask questions from there.
We're going to get to your staff in just a moment. I will tell you that we have been going for 1 hour and 39 minutes on tape, so we're 20 minutes short of our 2-hour time period. The one last item that we need to get taken care of, and this is part of a city concern as well, is our next 2 meetings. The holidays come up and sometimes it gets difficult with meetings. The good news is the last Thursday of November happens to be November 30th, which is the week after Thanksgiving, and so we will meet on that day. Now the difficulty, well, it's not a difficulty, but something that we need to consider is that we do need to have a December meeting. Eric will explain that in a little bit. So, that leaves us really 2 days in December. We can meet on the 14th or the 21st. The proposal would maybe be the 14th over the 21st.
And I'll bring food.
And Maria will
I won't
provide
bring
the
food on
party.
the 21st, but I will bring food on the 14th.
So is everyone okay with meeting on December 14th?
That can't work.
Why is that?
That's the NWC-CAC open house. It's already, you gotta find another
What
set.
time is the open house?
6 or 7:30.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if y'all wanna go forward with it,
Yeah, that's difficult though. So the other day that's left.
No.
Okay. Eric, is this? If we did, is the 7th too early in terms of your timeline?
It's pretty tight,
early.
but we would have broadband.
What about, so what's happening the 13th?
The Wednesday, the 13th.
Because the problem with December is that a lot of
It's so
people
hard.
have events.
The 13th is the Heron Pond, it's the final Heron Pond.
You're right, it is the Heron Pond meeting.
Open house meeting. You got the 13th and the 14th.
Sap, I'm going to kick
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for coming,
But I will say this, for our open house, we're willing to work with placemaking to figure out. Chris? Well, we'll talk offline, but.
So are you telling us to take the 14th?
I'm telling you that I'm gonna talk to Eric.
Yeah, I thought I'd contribute some Cuban food for that event, but only if you,
The word,
but
okay.
not on the 21st, because I'll be making,
So here's the thing, we will have a meeting in December. Obviously, we need to work through this. We need to do some negotiation among agencies, and we will get back with you, okay? And with that, it's probably time to move on to the other stuff, so
Yeah.
please.
all right.
Continue. Let me pull up the
What
next
are you bringing
thing.
for food, Maria?
I don't know, what do you want me to bring for food? I was going to bring Cuban food, because that's traditionally,
That's good enough.
Good,
I'm
you
not
know.
being Santa Claus.
no, you don't, you won't be Santa Claus? Okay, all right.
So I've put a really unreasonable burden on the teams to go quickly, and I think parking and placemaking are the most detailed, so if any of the other teams want to donate minutes, go for it.
Okay. Well, welcome, or thank you for having us here. Jay Rankins with MIG, leading the placemaking team, spoke to you a few times already. We want to do a quick update for you, and there's 3 of us. So it says on the agenda it's just me, but we also have Julie Skeen and Eric Anderson as well. So really quickly in response to the question about the adjacency to the neighborhoods, yeah, he asked that question earlier. So there's several ways that we're addressing this in the placemaking study. So one would be thinking about the physical connection, not only across Brighton, or to Brighton and across Brighton, and thinking about pedestrian connections, bicycle connections, and vehicular connections for that matter, but also the other edges of the campus, and then also across the campus. We're also thinking about programming. So from a programming perspective, there's a 365-day-a-year sort of presence. So what types of activities, events, programs are available, and then also the annual events or kind of community-oriented events that may occur on the site. Thinking about the edge design, so that's actually sort of physical design. Are we putting? Obviously, we want to put back of house and different things like that, loading, unloading, facing the neighborhood, and so thinking about what are those active uses, really good sort of neighborhood-friendly design adjacent to the community. And then just celebration of the neighborhoods through all the different things that we're doing. So creating educational opportunities, telling the story of the neighborhood through the different art, interpretive elements, all the different aspects there. So that's a quick response there. Did also want to mention that we are building the placemaking work upon the neighborhood plans, as well as the master plan. So we have members of our team who are currently working in the neighborhoods and have actually were participants working on the development of those plans. Louisville, Anna Leary, Swansea. We're going to have continued outreach, which Julie will speak to in just a moment. And then we're also incorporating the work that the Blueprint citywide effort is doing, thinking about centers and corridors and the roles of the different neighborhoods play too in this area. So the update then on other aspects. We are working on that rail realignment study that we talked about last time. So thinking about the merits of moving the rail towards National Western Center Drive, and in particular the challenges that may pose related to river access, but thinking about the benefits that that may actually add for creating more contiguous site and creating opportunities along Betty Cram Drive, which weren't there previously. We have sat down, as Paul mentioned, with the equestrian livestock folks at the stock show, their executive committees regarding both looking at programming refinement. We have actually engaged in quite a few student groups. There's a lot of universities, graduate programs in particular, that are very engaged and interested in this effort. So we've hosted Iowa State University, a graduate program. Several of the team members from the MIG team, as well as from NUCO, have gone and spoken to CU Denver's graduate program. And we are actually arranging some Colorado State University interns to be working with us in the coming terms. We have continued public art coordination, historic resource coordination. There's already the mention of the 4701 Brighton building. We're really excited to hear the results of that and see if that building can in fact be moved and look for a permanent home for that on site, as well as other historic structures. Waiting on some continued assessment work that Mead & Hunt is doing. There's a market study. I think as we mentioned previously, there's a big work session that we have in town on Monday for that. We're beginning to set meetings to assess the types and scales of different events that can be hosted on site. And I think at that point, I have one more thing that I'd like to add, but I'd ask Julie to come to give an update on community engagement.
I'll keep this very short. As you know, part of our strategy for engagement is to be out there at all these meetings that are already scheduled. These meetings that are already happening on all different projects. We started that for the first time with the Washington Street meeting that you've heard about. Saw a lot of familiar faces there. I think that was a really great opportunity to start that conversation, and we're going to continue doing that. So we've got the meeting. You have something in your flyer on the 3rd of November. That's a discussion that's going to happen later on this meeting. We're going to be attending there. We're going to be at the mayor's cabinet in the community, as well as we'll be continuing to develop some of these sites and then actually schedule an event early next year that we'll actually schedule ourselves. So with that, the other two major efforts that we're working toward over the next couple of months, we're going to do an online survey, getting it out to the community, to tourist organizations, to as broad a group, the National Western Stockton Volunteers, those types of groups, asking questions to start feeding into the technical aspects of the placemaking study. And we're also rolling out what we're calling thought leader workshops. We just got to go ahead to start moving forward with these, to move and I'll actually be reaching out to Jocelyn on this, to bring academia and industry together now before the designers get too far along in the design, and talk about whether these technical topics like regeneration, stormwater management, all these types of topics, and we'll be bringing some of these experts in now to start talking about the state of the science, best practices, and to start feeding into our design efforts.
So regarding the survey, one thing that I'd point out is we would really like to use to vet that instrument before we distribute it more broadly. So we'll be having an opportunity to weigh in on that, help to shape that, craft that, as well as obviously want your input is very valuable to us. And then the last thing that I'll say before turning over to Eric is we're very excited that Task Order 2, the scope and contract are finalized. Major pieces of that moving forward immediately. And just a reminder that a lot of it is about infrastructure design So looking at phase 1 and 2 infrastructure and going to 15%, 30% on some items, infrastructure design. But before we can do that, right now we're working on establishing what are the constraints across the site from an infrastructure perspective, drainage perspective, all those different aspects, as well as the site planning. So revisiting the site plan. So I actually want to turn over to Eric, and he's just going to give you a quick overview of the schedule related to site planning.
Right. So the importance of meetings in November, December, with the new site plan, and I say new because with the movement of the railroad from the middle of the site, it opens up opportunities that we have to look at in the site plan. So the master plan that we've been staring at for the last 3 years has some opportunities to be much more effective from an operational standpoint, from a placemaking standpoint, and so we start next week actively to start to look at kind of refiguring the boxes on the plan to come to a better site plan that works for everyone. And so we want to make sure that you guys are fully involved in that process. And it's kind of similar to the process we used during the master plan. And so for the next 2 meetings, we will be bringing you diagrams, thoughts, how people move in and out of the site, traffic configuration, all those pieces. And now that we will have a baseline here shortly. So the planning work needs to include all the baseline information. So everything that's in the plan needs to be shown on the plan. And then operations and maintenance and all those pieces, how trucks, people, cars, animals move in and out of the site need to be looked at and finalized. And then of course the placemaking component, what kind of places are we making, how do those get activated? All that is part of this planning work, so we want you actively involved with that. So our hurry on this is that to meet our schedule to do the capital build, we have to have an approved site plan by the end of January. So we have a lot of work to do. You guys are going to have a lot of work to do in coming along with us through this process, and it's very important that you're part of the process. So that's what we'll be doing in the next couple of meetings, and I'm going to request from Liz and Maria that we have a good chunk of time in those meetings to go through things.
Okay.
We're going to hold off on questions until the entire city team is gone, and we'll just have an open session of sorts.
Okay, so very quickly, Eric Schaffrin, Office of the National Western Center. And I'm going to talk about, very quickly, the 1909 Stadium Arena Market Study. So we talked about this, it's mentioned in the master plan. So, that didn't work.
Slideshow. Up at the top. Slideshow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so public markets are everywhere. They're in almost every major city in the country, with one very clear exception, which is Denver.
What is?
Very nice. Throw us $100, Shaffer.
Okay, you're 5 minutes in.
New microphone on its way. So basically everywhere except for Denver. They're used for all sorts of things. They're used for as gathering places, not just markets, but gathering places, event spaces, community opportunities to bring community together. And most importantly, we're talking about public markets. We're not talking about food halls. Food halls are they're the latest thing. They're moving in across the country, but we're talking about public markets, a market that serves a public purpose, located in or creates a public space in the community, and are made up of locally owned independent businesses operated by owners. And usually these are public entities owned publicly, not owned privately. The benefits of public markets are well defined and well developed. I don't think we need to go into the details of it. Provide economic opportunity, catalyze renewal of downtown, etc. There was a study actually that was done in Denver by the Downtown Denver Partnership several years ago, And what they determined was that there is significant demand for public market. But they also found out that they needed 40,000 square feet and they needed that space to be donated to the public market, and they needed significant parking. So while there was excitement about bringing a public market to downtown Denver, no developers stepped up to provide the land for that public market. So while it was a great idea, it continued to remain a great idea. So what we have endeavored with the master plan is to set forward goals around food that hopefully set the stage for bringing that public market to the National Western Center, to the GES communities. And there are a number of goals that are outlined in the master plan around food, and specifically identified the Stadium Arena market, the Stadium Arena, the 1909 Stadium Arena, as a potential future home for a public market. So as we know, the Stadium Arena currently sits nestled within the Hall of Education and Stadium Hall. And our goal is to, through a historic rehabilitation, to restore it to its original grandeur as it was in 1909 when it was built. And in the master plan, you can see the renderings show that building sitting within the confines of the overall complex, here shown adjacent to the CSU Center, surrounded by public plazas and gardens. In the master plan, we also put renderings together to show what the interior of the space could look like, and very similar to a lot of those pictures that I showed of the public markets from around the country. And we did do some initial schematics to see how could we turn this wonderful building into a space that could occupy potentially not just a public market, but additional spaces as well. So what we are launching now, and we are in the process of engaging a team that is led by Anderson Hallis, to do 6 things. Number 1, establish an advisory working group, and a piece of paper was just handed out to everybody with the details of that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We're going to do an historic structure assessment. This is to determine what can we actually do with this building. Is it structurally stable and sound? Can it be converted into the uses that we would like to use it for? An economic feasibility study. While a public market is a great idea, if it's not done well, they fail. There are examples of failed public markets all around the country. So if we're going to bring one to Denver, we want to do it right, and we want to build one that is actually sustainable in the long term. So we need to run the numbers, we need to do a market study to determine if it's possible to do that. From there, we end up with a preferred development plan that outlines all of the various uses, public market, other incubator spaces, office spaces, public kitchen and commissary that might be able to be used by the vendors, all of these various ideas. A Colorado Welcome Center is another one that's on the table. And put together a business plan and a partnership and governance model for how can we put together the right group of people to build the building, to rehabilitate the building, and then operate it going forward. And I should add that we are doing this with funding from the State Historic Fund, from History Colorado. So thank you, History Colorado, for funding this study, because we could not do it without you. So the advisory working group, what we are asking is, we are putting together a group of around 25 volunteer members in 7 subject matter expert areas, and those are identified and listed on this sheet. So folks that, the residents that are those responsible for household food shopping, those that are interested in bringing local businesses to the public market, potentially being vendors. Also those that are historic building renovation and rehabilitation experts, folks in the restaurant industry, owners, chefs, buyers, farmers, etc. Folks that we can bring together to advise us in a series of meetings, 5 meetings in total, 15 to 20 hour of total time commitment, and help advise us through this process of developing a preferred development plan of conducting this feasibility study to find a way to bring this public market to the 1909 Stadium Arena. Thank you very much.
Well, questions?
Thank you, Eric. There is, and I am going on to the next agenda item here.
Well, wait,
Is that correct?
I just have a question. If people from the CAC want to volunteer to be on this working group, what do they do?
So contact information is at the bottom. Just contact Barb Frommel.
Barb? Okay.
Yeah, just send Barb Frommel an email. Her email address is on the bottom of the sheet.
And Barb is not here tonight, so I'm going to cover the next agenda item, which is to review a letter of support for the infra grant to the U.S. Department of Transportation. This is the federal grant program that we had. It's the new version of the rail grant that we have talked about previously. And let me just find the letter to hold it up so folks can see it in their pack.
I'll find it.
Looks like this. What we are doing is we are getting ready to submit an application for grant funding for the reconstruction of the rail lines on the site. We have submitted for this grant 2 times previously under the prior federal administration. Infra is the new grant program where we can look for rail funding with a local match, and we are collecting letters of support. So the letter that's in your packet is the one that's here for review. And Maria, I'll ask, how do you want to collect comments and
what we normally
any amendments to it?
What's your timing for this?
I'll have to get back to you with that. That's.
Can I give you one comment?
Do you know?
Yeah.
1st of November?
1st of November?
So if I could just say one thing, I had a quick conversation with Barb about this. I thought she was coming tonight, but this is essentially the same letter that you all have sent in the past. It's basically the same letter. And normally what we do with this letter, unless you have additions or changes, I would take the attendance sheet from tonight and affix those names to the letter. And then forward it to Barb to include in her grant package. So that I will leave you with that thought that really it is just about the same letter. It's just kind of been reworded because it's a different, form of a grant. So here, I'll let you handle whether they
That's
want
right.
just.
Questions about this and thoughts? If you want up at the beginning of November, Eric, is that
Sorry, what?
November 1st?
November
1st,
1st?
We're trying to get, I think it's due the 3rd, so we're trying to get the whole package together.
We can send it out via email tomorrow to everybody one more time, and if anybody's got comments or suggestions, we'll need to have them by noon on Monday, and then be able to do that, so you guys have it by November 1st.
So I'll be with members of the CAC and Councilman Brooks on Tuesday for the mayor meeting. That would be a great time to collect comments and feedback on the letter if we can send it out. It is one of the really important ways that we bring funding to the campus. It was envisioned early on as a way to solve some of the funding gaps through grants that we talked about even with the 2C ballot measure. And we are hopeful, and the more support we have on this, the more success we think we'll have at the federal level.
I move we authorize the NUCO office to incorporate any feedback Gretchen receives by the date you just said, to send this letter to the infra people.
Tuesday morning after the mayor meeting.
Can we endorse it?
Well, not everybody will be there, so we'll just say that
If there could be
we'll send it out. We'll send it out and
feedback
do it
brought
out. Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, as long as everybody, people
As long as people have it and people know that it's
endorse it
going
in
out.
spirit, and then you do the mechanism. That's what I
Great.
say.
Okay. All right.
We really appreciate that support. We'll keep looking for other grant funding opportunities. One of the things I also need to mention about the presentation you saw in the 1909 Stadium Arena that Eric Schafferin just presented, just to be clear, when you see us present a baseline scope, schedule, and budget, that is a facility that is not in phases 1 and 2. So you will not see that. We are doing work looking forward to phases 3 through 8. And that's another place where we'll be looking for funds. We are not able to change the use of that facility because the show must go on for Paul and the stock show until we're able to activate a new arena, expo hall, phase 1 and 2 assets. So you won't see that, but this is important preparatory work so that we can lay the foundation that can often take a year or 2 to understand the business model and partners.
Can I just make a quick comment? I think History Colorado deserves a round of applause from us. They really have stepped up on some of these really critical projects that are not funded through the city.
You too could have a street named after you, right?
All right, we've got Chris Proud.
So we're good to move on for the next
Yes.
agenda item?
It's all you.
Great. Okay, I'm Chris Proud. I am the project manager for the city side for the National Western Center Parking and Transportation Demand Management Study. So we're here tonight to really give you an update. I've got one other member of the team here, Beth Vogelsang is in the back, and she might be coming up when we do the Q&A piece. But what we wanted to do was just walk you through the status of the project at this point in time. And I think in the interest of time, it's sort of three key things that we're really going to be talking about, which is the transportation demand management analysis and our findings to date, and also the same for our specialized vehicles. If you're thinking about trucks and trailers bringing in, large equipment for stages or cattle or horses and so forth to the site, and then also parking. So those are the three things that I'll hit on here. Our study area, you all are quite familiar, so I'm really not going to spend time here, but from a mobility perspective, we are looking at access to and from the site. So it is a much bigger area. It really is regional as far as a regional draw for the kind of events that we have on the campus, both now and in the future. I will touch on these items. These are our sort of key scope items that our team is delivering to, and these are quite important. It's kind of our charge. First is to try and figure out what the right level of transportation demand management should be on the site. And most of you are probably familiar with that term. We've met with you, multiple times in the past. But just to let you know, transportation demand management is about a variety of different policies and programs that really either encourage or incentivize people to access the campus in different ways, other than, say, driving and just parking. Now, that's part of the mix, driving and parking, but we are looking at other mechanisms for bringing people to the campus as well. So that's what TDM is really about. We're also looking at space requirements for our specialized vehicles, again, those trucks and trailers that I was talking about, and then identifying what the parking demand is, both now and in the future, and what our supply is on site, because we know the site is constrained. And then finally talking a bit about technology, because that's going to play a big part both for the users and the folks that are going to be managing parking and access to the site in the future. This graphic is our process. We showed you this the last time that we met with you. We also saw many of you back at our open house in the early summer, and we went through this. And as you can see, the blue is kind of where we are today, and we're almost towards the end of the project. We've been working on it for about 9 months now, and we're really at that finding stage, and we're talking about recommendations kind of behind the scenes, but right now we have our analysis complete and our findings. We're looking to tie up the project by early next year, and we'll be back to talk with you about recommendations early in 2018. So our public engagement, this is just an image from our open house, but we have an extensive public engagement program that we've been rolling out, meeting with CAC, meeting with stakeholders, and also our project management team, which is represented by a lot of different agencies, as well as city staff. So getting into more of the detail here, talking about transportation demand management, and our goal when we were analyzing transportation demand management and figuring out what our findings were, we are really looking at trying to look at reducing vehicle miles traveled, look at reducing single occupant vehicles, and look at really pulling back the demand for parking on the site so that we can use the site as efficiently as possible. And this list that we've got up here are a number of different, what we call TDM programs that would be implemented or could be implemented that we're looking at. And this is just an example of many, and we're looking at scaling it up over time. We wouldn't say that you would do an extensive TDM at this exact moment in time, but it would grow as the campus changes over time and we have new facilities. But some of these programs include things like a pedestrian network. I mean, we don't want to direct people to bike or walk to the campus if we don't have good facilities for doing that. Also looking at parking costs, local shuttles, making sure that people can really get from their origin to their destination is really the goal of TDM. And I think here, the graphic that I've got up now is what's the benefit that we get for doing that. And what you're looking at are sort of different phases of time of pre-construction on the site all the way through to full build-out. And we're looking at different kinds of events and what, by doing different TDM programs, might gain us for both the stock show all the way through to a typical day. And we are looking at VMT reductions, which is in blue, single occupant vehicle reductions in orange, and then the gray are the parking reductions. And for example, for a large event, today, if we were to implement TDM programs, we think we can draw back that demand of parking by about 8%. But then in full build-out, we can draw it back by maybe as much as 14%. So it really is significant. And again, it just gives you a flavor for the benefit that we potentially get from TDM. Moving on now to specialized vehicles, and again, this is the trucks and trailers and bringing in equipment and animals. One of the things that we really learned as we were going through this, we did a lot of work talking with the people that move the animals and move the equipment to understand exactly how they operate and work. But those exhibitors and vendors are the folks that make the events on site successful. And it's really critical because if the exhibitors and vendors have space to move and can be successful, then visitors will come to see these different events, and they'll be able to employ people to work at these different events as well. So if we have to make some trade-offs in the different users on site, we're thinking that the exhibitors and the vendors rise to the top, but we are also always trying to find a balance for how we really give priority on the site. But when it comes to the truck and trailer needs, what we had to do was analyze exactly how much space they actually physically need on the campus itself. And through talking with all the different groups and our own analysis, what we've come up with here, you can see in this graph, this is phase 1 and 2 operational and our full build out, also National Western Stock Show and a large event. And Stock Show, for example, once phase 1 and 2, so the RTA, everything that's in that is built out and complete, we need about 34 acres for both staging and storage of larger vehicles. And that's not saying that we're going to dedicate that much space on the campus to doing solely that, but that is the need. So we need to sort of, now we have those findings, kind of solve for exactly where on the campus that may occur, or off the campus as well. But it gives you a sense of how much space is really necessary to do the types of things to support the events that are out there. Go. So then moving into parking, this is sort of the last piece. When we looked at our objectives for parking, we really wanted to make sure that parking was supporting the growth of events on the campus. We know how quickly we anticipate growth in events to happen. So that's a key issue, that parking supports that growth and success. We also want to look at technology and make sure that we're providing through technology and other means a really high level of service for the people that are coming to either work an event, to be an exhibitor, or to be a visitor to the site. So the last time we spoke with you, we showed you demand figures that we had modeled of what the parking demand is likely to be on the site, given the growth that we know that's going to happen in events over time. So in this graph, what you're looking at, again, are those time frames, and then you see these stacked bars, and they're showing you a stock show event, a large concurrent event, which is something that's probably more typical, and then a daily event. And then we've added in this line that's here that you see going up and down, which is actually what we analyze to be our supply of parking on site. And you can see that that line goes above, this is full build out, but goes above that supply line. And it really is that additional demand that goes above what we can accommodate on the site that we're going to need to solve for. But it is through this analysis that we determined exactly what we're going to need to solve for. And some of that is going to be recommendations through this study, and some of it's going to be moving forward for the placemaking team to really sort out exactly where on the campus this would fall. And again, additional considerations on exactly how we deal with that delta. And one of the things we've thought of, and this is just in concept, is really thinking about a very robust shuttle service that's off-site. And again, these are our considerations at the moment, and we need to finalize this and work with our partners in order to determine what those final recommendations will be. But this just gives you a sense. This is intended to be a diagram. If you look at the blue area here, the light blue, if that's 250 acres of the campus. And then there's lots of other things that are dedicated on that campus that take up space. We're thinking about how you use off-site shuttled parking to basically support that additional parking that's necessary beyond what we can actually accommodate on the campus itself. And today, the stock show, for example, uses areas such as Coors Field to do some storage and do some visitor parking. And we're thinking, these are our timeframes here of pre-construction, that we basically do the same thing. That stays the same. We try and use Coors Field or some equivalent. But we know that that demand is going to grow over time. And one of the things we've also heard from stakeholders is making sure that we're bringing people in from all different quadrants of the campus itself. Right now, most people are actually accessing it from Brighton and from that sort of southeast corner. But we would see, as demand grows over time, that we're likely to make some recommendations that employees and volunteers would go off-site, some additional visitor space. That continues to grow as time goes on based on the demand calculations. Really to full build out, which we have a fair amount that would be off-site, but one thing to be aware of is that it's really only 6 to 9 days out of the year that we would require this level of off-site parking, and it is during stock show. So we need to figure out, again, how to make that a really good experience for drivers who might be coming in and parking in some of these remote lots. So this is the last slide that I've got here. We wanted to make sure that we left you with some neighborhood discussion as well, because we know in talking with the stakeholders that the impacts, particularly of parking to the neighborhood, is a key one. And one of the things that we're working on including within our plan are addressing those concerns for parking conflicts. And the idea is until the event space is up and running, we don't exactly know all of the issues that might happen, but we want to be prepared for them. So we're talking about creating a toolbox of programs we could draw from depending on the impacts or problems we might have. And they kind of start with enforcement, looking at parking area management plans, which are plans that our parking group does fairly often now, and they create them hand in hand with the community to understand exactly what the parking challenges are that you're experiencing. But we can look at additional parking permits. You have that at least during the stock show right now. Maybe that could be expanded. And then other opportunities for new on-street parking, maybe time controls, additional loading zones, whatever we determine, working with the local community to be appropriate. So I realize that's a lot to take in, and I was trying to do it quick, but I think we can handle questions.
Already on the website, that presentation.
Chris is now,
we have one more thing from the city.
And just that presentation is already posted for everybody to access on the website.
That was my question.
That presentation is already posted.
What did you just say?
I've already posted that presentation on the website. That one, yes. The one before will be. Yes, that one just arrived this evening, but this one has been posted, yes.
And Chris will be back
Take a listen.
again.
Oh,
Chris will be
thank
back
you,
again.
Chris.
Yeah.
Again, again. Thank you, Chris.
So I think someone from the city was supposed to do this, but since I have the flyer in my hand, I'll do it. On Friday, November 3rd, there's going to be a campus-wide celebration of the National Western Center, starting with the groundbreaking at 5135 Race Court from 11:30 to 12:15. It signals the beginning of the construction project here at the National Western Center. You don't want to miss it. I'm sure it'll be lots of fun. And then at the Coliseum, that same day from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., there's going to be a family-friendly, and that's emphasized, family-friendly celebration with entertainment, food, and activities as the city and the Office of the National Western thanks the community. So it's a community appreciation celebration. Great party. And thank you, Gretchen. November marks the 2-year anniversary of the passage of ballot measure 2C, and as we know, GES came out strong for 2C and may have had the highest turnout in the city, as I remember, for 2C. And some of you,
Percentage-wise, it did.
percentage-wise, you did. We did. I live close enough. I'm in 5 Points. I'm a neighbor. So I'm going to run against you. November 3rd.
Hey, that's on the tape.
November 3rd, come to the campus-wide celebration.
Can you recognize
Well,
these
you're
guys?
making announcements from the podium. Would you take that one too?
They're here. If they could just stand up and say one thing.
Okay,
Yes, they
CU
need to call.
Architecture, you're here. Let's talk about your urban design workshop.
There you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Cambrio, and this is Conrad Omendo, and we're graduate students through the University of Colorado Denver, and we're part of MIG's selected field. And what we're doing is on November 2nd, next Thursday, we're having an urban design workshop at Focus Points Family Resource Center at 250 148th Avenue. And we really want to have your input into this. What we're looking at is the vision, we're looking at existing conditions, and we really want your input to make this a successful project, because we're going to present to the city and MIT.
Yeah, and we'll also have Spanish translation available at the event as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you, Denver Lynx. Not Buffaloes. Alice.
The University of Colorado, we're all connected, baby.
It's all one big family.
So I know I promised questions at the end, but we're gonna do it a little different. As we used to say in the House of Representatives, in the absence of a rule, the speaker makes the rule. There's no rule about Q&A, so I'm making a rule. So I'm gonna ask the city folks to hang out for about 10 minutes afterwards, 10 to 15 minutes afterwards, and if you have questions for any member of the city team, go find that member of the city team to ask the question, because it's 8 o'clock, a little after 8 p.m. And I don't feel like it's a good idea to keep us here much longer
Betty
before
needs to
we
go
do
to
other
bed.
things. And I'm not repeating that.
AE's got an announcement.
Real quick, the Denver Post at 4:30 just endorsed 2A through G, so people can see that. And I'd like to encourage people to pick up one of these, and there's yard signs over there. I have a list of the projects. Millions of dollars are going into Groveville, Elyria, and Quantia. This is sorted by neighborhoods here, and there is going to be an accountability advisory committee that's excellent after this. It was one of the best citywide things I've ever seen in a bond measure. So I'm hoping people, amidst all the controversy and angst about what's going on in Denver, I truly hope people will support this and dig down into what these projects are and consider becoming part of the advisory committee, assuming that it's victorious. So if people, welcome to take the yard signs. There's a get out the vote thing going on, and they need to be mailed by November 3rd and dropped off. And I have English-Spanish flyers that people can put out to their heart's content.
Well, two final comments. My petitions will be available for my council run for District 9 in a few weeks. I figure they won't recognize that the brothers are different.
We're going to have to get some
It goes in the file. You know, Terrence needs to go home.
And then, I keep it run too. And then finally, on a very serious note, we just have to give Betty Cram another big round of applause. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Does anybody have any other announcements before, I take the mic away from Terrence, because he's got to go, man.
Yeah, I had a new grandchild last week.
Yay!
Can you adjourn the meeting?
We're adjourned.